Friends, welcome to J.Reddit. Today's story will send chills down your spine. It's about a poor widow, her 7 daughters, and a mystery that shook an entire village. In a quiet countryside village, there lived a widow who had no son, only 7 daughters. Life wasn't easy for her. She worked tirelessly in the homes of wealthy families, scrubbing floors, washing laundry, and doing chores nobody else wanted to do. What little she earned, she brought home to feed her daughters. Despite their poverty, the widow raised her daughters with dignity. They wore modest clothes, stayed inside, and studied by the glow of an oil lamp. They never wandered the streets or spoke to strangers. The widow's greatest treasure wasn't money or land, it was the honor and purity of her daughters. But then, disaster struck. Her eldest daughter grew ill, weak, pale, and constantly tired. She was taken to the village doctor. After examining her, the doctor looked at the widow with a heavy heart and said the words, "No, mother expected. Your daughter is expecting a child." The widow froze. She nearly collapsed. What? How? She isn't married. She's never even been alone with a man. But the truth was undeniable. Her eldest daughter was pregnant. When confronted, the girl wept bitterly. "Mother, I swear, I don't know how this happened. I've never spoken to any man. Please, believe me." The widow was torn between shock and compassion. She wanted to believe her daughter, and in her heart, she did. But she also knew the cruelty of the world. Whispers had already started in the village. Months later, the eldest gave birth to a child, and the widow, though broken, accepted the grandchild and raised him. But just as life began to settle, tragedy struck again. Her second daughter also turned up pregnant. Then, the third. Then, the fourth, barely 14 years old. The widow was devastated. Each daughter swore the same thing: "We don't know. We never met a man. We don't understand how this happened." Neighbors began to talk. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said the daughters were lying. Others said the family was cursed. The widow lived in humiliation, drowning in fear and confusion. Finally, she could no longer stay silent. She knew someone was sneaking into her home, destroying her family. She had to act. One morning, she wrapped herself in her old shawl and went to the royal court, where the king listened to petitions. Her face was streaked with tears as she stood before him. The king asked gently, "Mother, why do you weep? What burdens your heart?" The widow looked around. Dozens of eyes stared back at her. She lowered her head and said, "Your Majesty, I cannot speak of this before everyone. Please, let me tell you in private." The court murmured in shock, but the king silenced them. He rose from his throne and said, "Bring her to my chamber. No woman shall suffer in silence in my kingdom." In private, the widow collapsed at his feet, crying, "My daughters, your Majesty, 4 of them are pregnant, and none of them knows how. Someone is entering my home in the night, but we cannot see who. I beg you, save us!" The king's heart grew heavy. He clenched his jaw. "Whoever has done this will be caught. I swear it." And with that, a plan was set into motion. That evening, the king called his minister. Together, they devised a clever strategy to catch the intruder. The minister explained, "Let us set a trap. Tie a goat on the widow's roof. If anyone tries to sneak into the house, the goat will cry out. Place guards nearby, but hidden, and tell the widow and her daughters to stay silent, no matter what they hear." The king agreed. "Do it tonight!" So, the minister went to the widow's home with a goat. She looked confused, but he reassured her. "Mother, do not fear. This goat will expose the one who haunts your family." He tied the goat on the roof, instructed 2 soldiers to keep watch, and told the widow and her daughters to remain calm no matter what happened. Then he returned to the palace. That night, silence covered the village. The widow's house was dark. The daughters lay awake, their hearts pounding. The goat stood restless on the rooftop, sensing something unseen. Midnight came. A shadow moved across the roof. Silent footsteps, creeping closer. Suddenly, the goat let out a sharp, desperate cry that echoed through the night. The daughters froze. The widow clutched her shawl tightly, whispering prayers. The guards rushed forward, bursting through the door. They seized the intruder as he tried to escape. He wore a dark mask, his face hidden. He struggled violently, but the guards held him fast. When the mask was torn away, the widow gasped. Her daughters screamed. It was their own uncle, the widow's brother-in-law. The widow's body shook with rage. She spat at him. You were their uncle! Their protector! How could you do this to your own blood? The next morning, the king's court was packed. The entire village gathered to see who the criminal was. Bound in chains, the uncle was dragged before the throne. The king's face was thunderous. The widow and her daughter stood to the side, trembling but resolute. The king demanded, Speak! Why would you commit such a crime against your own family? The man lowered his head, shame, finally, crushing him. He confessed everything. He admitted he had been jealous of his elder brother, angry that his brother had a wife and children while he was left alone. When his brother died, bitterness consumed him. He turned his envy into hatred and his hatred into evil. He admitted to creeping into the widow's home at night, drugging them with herbs and committing his vile deeds in secret. The court erupted in fury. The widow's daughters wept. The people shouted for justice. The king raised his hand and silenced the crowd. His voice shook with anger. In my kingdom, no woman shall suffer in silence. No family shall be destroyed by betrayal. You will pay for what you have done. The stage was set for justice. Asterisk, the king thundered. Why would you commit such evil against your own family? The uncle broke down and confessed. He admitted he had been jealous of his older brother, angry that his brother gave all his love to his wife and children. When his brother died, instead of becoming their protector, he let hatred consume him. He confessed to sneaking into the house at night, using tricks to keep them asleep, and committing his vile crimes. The courtroom erupted in anger. The daughters sobbed. The widow shook with rage. The king rose from his throne, his voice like thunder. You were their uncle. To them, you were as a father. Instead of protecting them, you betrayed them. In my kingdom, betrayal like this will not stand. His judgment was swift. The man was sentenced to death, and the punishment was carried out that same day. The people cheered, shouting for justice. The widow wept, but she finally felt the weight of fear lifting. But the king wasn't finished. He turned to the widow and said, Your daughter's honor will be restored. I will see to it myself. He arranged marriages for the 4 older girls with noble, trustworthy soldiers from his own army. He gave them land, wealth, and protection, so they would never be vulnerable again. To the widow, he promised, when your younger daughters are grown, I will secure their futures too. The widow bowed in gratitude, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, she smiled. And then the king faced the people. Let this be a lesson. Silence protects the guilty. Fear feeds the oppressor. But when even the poorest among us dares to speak, truth rises and justice prevails. The crowd erupted in cheers. The widow and her daughters left that courthouse not broken, but rebuilt. Friends, this story carries a timeless truth. Silence makes injustice stronger. Courage, even in the darkest moment, is the first step toward justice. If this story moved you, share it because someone out there might need the courage to speak today. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories of justice, courage, and hope. I never thought I'd write something like this, but I need to get it off my chest. I grew up in a small rural town. My dad passed away when I was little, and that left my mama, poor widow, with 7 daughters and no sons. She worked herself to death in rich people's houses, cleaning, washing, scrubbing floors. Whatever scraps of food or little money she earned went straight to us. We didn't have much, but she raised us with dignity. She always said, we may be poor, but our honor is priceless. For years, Life was hard but stable. Then, one by one, disaster hit our home. My oldest sister got sick. The doctor said she was pregnant. She broke down crying, swearing she had never even talked to a man in her life. My mom believed her, and so did we. But soon after, my second sister turned up pregnant. Then the third, then the fourth. She was barely 14. People in town whispered that we were cursed, that we were lying, that we had shamed ourselves. My mom cried every night, completely broken. All four of my sisters insisted they had no idea how it happened. And honestly, looking at their faces, I knew they were telling the truth. Something was happening in our house and we couldn't see it. Finally, my mom couldn't take it anymore. She went to the local king to beg for help. She told him everything in private. He was furious and swore he'd find out who was behind it. That night, his minister came to our home with a goat. Yeah, an actual goat. He tied it to our roof and told us, "Stay quiet no matter what you hear. This goat will be our alarm. Guards sit outside. Ready?" I'll never forget what happened next. It was past midnight, and we were all lying awake, terrified. Suddenly, the goat screamed loud, sharp, almost like it knew. My heart dropped. The guards burst in and caught someone wearing a mask trying to sneak into the house. They ripped it off. And it was our uncle. My dad's own brother. That moment destroyed us. My mom collapsed. She spat at him, crying. "You were supposed to protect them! You were like their father! How could you do this?" My sisters just sobbed, shaking uncontrollably. The next morning, in front of the entire town, he confessed everything. He admitted he had been jealous of my dad, angry that all of Dad's love went to us. His daughters, after Dad died, he let his bitterness turn him into a monster. He used herbs to make my mom and sisters fall into a deep sleep so he could do things they didn't even realize were happening. For years, he was the shadow destroying our home. The king's judgment was swift. My uncle was executed. The people cheered for justice. But the king didn't stop. That he arranged marriages for my 4 older sisters, gave them security and honor back, and promised my mom that he would personally ensure the younger daughters' futures too. Even now, when I think back, I get chills. A goat saved us. My mom's courage saved us. But the real lesson? Silence only protects the guilty. Speaking up, even when you're terrified, can change everything. If you're reading this and carrying something heavy, please don't stay silent. I know it's scary, but your voice could save you, just like it saved us. **. Even today, when I think about it, my chest gets heavy. A goat saved us. My mom's courage saved us. But most of all, speaking up saved us. Silence only protects the guilty. If you're living with something like this, please don't stay quiet. Anyway, that's my story. Writing it here feels like taking a huge weight off my shoulders. Thanks if you made it this far. I've got another story too, completely different but just as crazy. Maybe I'll share it next time. *. So a while back I shared the story about how a goat ended up exposing my uncle's disgusting secret and saving my sisters. Honestly, I thought that was the end of the nightmare. I thought justice had been served, life would move on, and maybe, just maybe, our family could finally heal. But I was wrong. Because about a year later, something else came out. And this time, it wasn't about my uncle. It was about my mom. Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, my mom is one of the strongest, bravest people I've ever known. She worked herself to the bone to raise us. But even strong people carry secrets. And hers was one she never wanted us to know. It started when a man showed up at our house. He wasn't from our village. He was older, well-dressed, and he claimed to know my father. My father had passed away years earlier. So first, we thought maybe he was just an old friend coming to pay respects. But then he asked to speak to my mom in private. That conversation changed everything. Later that night, I overheard them. I wasn't trying to snoop, but their voices carried through the thin walls of our home. I heard him say, "You promised me once?" And I kept my silence all these years. But now, your daughters deserve to know the truth. My stomach dropped. What truth? The next morning, my mom gathered us and broke down. She admitted that years ago, before she married my father, she had been forced into a secret arrangement. Her own family had pressured her into it for survival. She had never spoken about it, because when my dad married her, he promised to protect her and never let anyone shame her for her past. He kept that promise until the day he died. But now this man was back demanding money, threatening to tell the village if she didn't pay him off. Basically, blackmailing her with something she had no control over. We were shocked. Not because of her past, honestly. None of us cared. She was our mom, and she had already sacrificed everything for us. What crushed us was the idea that after all she'd been through, someone was still trying to destroy her. This time, though, we weren't staying silent. I went straight to the local court and told the king's minister. We'd already been through hell once. We weren't going to let another man use silence and fear to trap us. And guess what? The king called the man in. Under questioning, his story fell apart. He had no proof, no honor, just greed. The king ordered him punished for blackmail and made a public announcement clearing my mom's name. That was the day I realized something huge. Sometimes the truth isn't as terrifying as the fear of it. My mom carried her secret like it was poison, but once it was out, nobody cared as much as she thought. What really mattered was that she had raised us with love and dignity. So yeah, one goat exposed a monster, but later, one brave confession freed my mom from a lifetime of shame. Next story by Jack Shirt. Have you read my earlier posts about my family, how a goat exposed my uncle, and later, how my mom's hidden secret almost tore us apart? I thought maybe that was the end of it! But life doesn't just stop handing you storms because you survived the first one. This time, it was my sister. After everything that happened, the king himself arranged marriages for my older sisters. We thought this was finally their chance at peace. My second sister, in particular, was matched with a soldier, a man who had fought bravely, who was supposed to be strong, honorable, protective. Everyone said she was lucky. For a while, it seemed true. She smiled again. She laughed again. And we all felt like maybe we were finally moving on. But behind closed doors, things were very different. Her husband had a temper. Not the kind you can brush off. The kind that turns violent. He would lose it over the smallest things. If dinner was late, if she spoke too softly, if she looked disrespectful, he started controlling everything what she wore, where she went, who she talked to. He isolated her from us. Slowly, we saw her spirit break. The worst part? She stayed silent. After everything we'd been through, she didn't want to bring shame to the family again. She thought she had to endure it. And honestly, we almost lost her because of that silence. One night, she showed up at our house, bruised and trembling. She finally told us everything. My mom collapsed into tears, begging her not to go back. We took her to the king's minister again, the same man who had once saved us with a goat. This time, justice came in a different form. The soldier was stripped of his post, fined heavily, and publicly humiliated. The king annulled the marriage and declared that no woman in his kingdom should ever be forced to stay with a man who treated her that way. For the first time, my sister stood tall again. That day, I learned something I'll never forget. Sometimes the enemy isn't a stranger sneaking in at night. Sometimes it's the person you thought would protect you. And just like before, the lesson stayed the same. Silence only protects the guilty. Anyway, that's the next chapter of our story! Writing it here feels like reopening a wound, but also like letting it heal. Thanks for reading! Reddit! Maybe someday I'll share what happened when one of my younger sisters tried to start her own life in the city, and the danger that followed her there. So friends, this was today's story. Another reminder that sometimes the biggest danger doesn't come from outside, but from the people closest to us. Silence only feeds the guilty, and speaking up is the only way to break free. If this story touched you, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need the courage. And subscribe to J.Reddit for more powerful stories from real lives. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in my sister's place? Until next time, friends, this is J.Reddit, signing off. Goodbye.